All right, we'll call the General Government Committee meeting to order. We're looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Not all's in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
carries. How about our minutes from our July 10th meeting?
I read them and they are, as I recall them, with my memory, I made the motion we approve.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Not all's in favor,
Aye.
carries. Are there any public comments? Up there, aware of? No. Are there any supervisors present not seated as committee members that have any information in this committee?
Yeah, I'm here.
You have any information?
I'd like to share.
Can you go up to the podium and share with us? Sure.
Thank you.
I'm here today because of resolution 3423, giving the state the right to put broadband in private drives. To me, it's an infringement on property owners. They own the land. They should be able to control what goes on it. I'm personally involved in one of these situations right now where I have a private drive on my land. The people have easement to use it to get in and out, but they don't have easement for utilities. My family and others bought all that land back there to keep it wild. And all of a sudden, you know, somebody on the end or close to the end wants to develop the land. And they expect the landowner to give them easement. I don't think the county board should be involved in trying to influence the state to take away rights of citizens of Polk County and their land. So I just wanted to share that. I got involved in this twice. The first time I got involved in it, you know, I gave easement across my property, and the next thing you know, we can't use the property really for hunting or anything because there's so much noise, so much traffic, so much involvement back there. But it really changed the way we wanted to use the land. Now this one I'm involved with currently is wild land. There's 3/4 of a mile back in there. So just wanted to share my opinion to the committee. Thank you.
Any other supervisors have any information for this committee? If not, we have some presentations from outside agencies. And we've already had 3 or 4 of them. So we'll allow like 10 minutes for a presentation and 5 minutes for a question and answer. And we told the last group that went through that if they go over their minutes, we would have to look at that as, you know, financially, so. All right, Community Referral Agency.
Good afternoon. My name is Bree D'Agostino. I'm from the Community Referral Agency in Middletown, Wisconsin. We're a domestic violence and sexual assault emergency shelter. Next slide. So our mission is to eliminate domestic and sexual violence by providing shelter and services that promote peace, justice, and safety. So we function as a haven for individuals and their families who have experienced some sort of interpersonal violence in their lives. They stay at our shelter for a temporary amount of time in order to get back on their feet. We provide them with food, a bed. In some cases, we're able to provide limited transportation, whatever they need to get themselves started. We get donated, such as pots, pans, large furniture donations, clothes, whatever we can provide for them. All of our services are free and confidential. which means nobody ever has to see a bill or pay a dime for what they receive from us. One of our most important functions is to continue to educate the community on DV and SA, domestic violence and sexual assault, and ensure that battering will no longer remain a secret, and therefore the victims will not have to live with that shame and secrecy. So our services fall under a number of umbrellas. We offer emergency crisis support, support groups, legal advocacy, medical, and community education. Our emergency crisis support falls underneath these. We have a 24/7 hotline and crisis text lines. We have two. We have one for youth and one for adults. We provide our temporary emergency shelter, which is what we're best known for in our area. We provide safety planning for victim of violence to be able to help them escape their situation or be able to find alternate places to go if our facility doesn't work for them, whatever they might need from us. We also provide accompaniment to sexual assault nurse examinations. That's the collection of forensic evidence from somebody after they're assaulted by somebody, looking for DNA evidence to then support a case should they decide to bring that case forward. We offer a number of support groups in our area, such as STARS, Surviving Trauma Advocacy Resource Sessions, that's held at our shelter every Thursday night. Bond modification class and domestic violence education classes are both court ordered by a judge for somebody to modify a no contact order into a no abusive contact order, which is useful for individuals who might share children in their custody. We offer Seeking Safety, which is our jail curriculum that I provide in Polk County and Burnett County jails in the afternoons on Thursdays and Fridays. We offer a parenting support group on Friday afternoons for the parents in our shelter services and our outreach, as well as our girls group, which we have during hours of downtime in school. So things like study halls or of the like. Our legal advocacy is navigating the justice system and explaining how that works to individuals who come to us seeking things such as restraining orders, custody paperwork, divorce hearings. We're able to attend any court hearings with the survivors as long as they're related to their domestic violence or sexual assault cases. So unfortunately, we're not able to attend any criminal cases in which our victim might be considered the defendant, but we will attend any other cases involved. We can assist in filing temporary restraining orders, divorce, custody, and other legal paperwork. We can help them find an attorney as well as help them file crime victim compensation paperwork. Again, our medical advocacy involves us accompanying survivors on those sexual assault nurse examinations, as well as accompanying them to any medical appointments that might result from them being physically assaulted, such as a CT scan or an emergency room visit if they were to, say, break their nose or their arm or whatever might have happened during that assault. We can provide options for survivors based on their needs, but we cannot provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. None of us are doctors or nurses. We are just there to help them emotionally. So our community education portion is something that we're really trying to get forward with recently. So we've been at a lot of, say, health fairs, National Night Out, we were present, all sorts of like community events. So general information about CRA and our services is a presentation similar to this one that I can do at any point, anywhere, anytime, you name it, I'll be there. I could do specific presentations on domestic violence and sexual assault, human trafficking, the effects of domestic violence on children, and common signs of child sexual abuse. Those last two we specifically do during like in-service days for teachers. Any questions?
We still have probably 3 or 4 minutes.
I'm speedy.
Do you have any statistics from the previous year?
I did look up the statistics from the previous year. We had approximately 1,800 service hours amongst about 600 clients.
Where do those clients come from? Do you get referrals from police departments?
So police departments, emergency rooms, a lot of them are self-referrals through like individuals, family, friends, other people that have received our services. A lot of word of mouth, I would say, is our number one.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That would bring us to the Fair Society.
Good morning, everybody. We are the Polk County Fair. Don't press play on that just yet. The presentation is 6 minutes, so you've got 4 minutes for questions, and we should be well within our time frame. Pay attention, it moves fast. There's a lot of information, and we will take questions when we're done. Thanks.
I'm your flower and host plant judge this year, and I just judged a class of tiger lilies. Very common, a lot of people have these in their yards, whether they want to or not, in my case at home. So we just placed, I've got a total of 7 lilies in this class. In an open class, only 4 get a ribbon, and that's only if they're quality enough to get a ribbon. When we judge a flower, it isn't always about comparing this one to the one that's next to it. It's judging it based on its standard of perfection. So this is our 2023 open flowers and houseplants tiger lily class.
Thank you, guys. Kind of questions if you got, what else other information can we offer?
I think it'd be helpful if you explained what some of those events were at the beginning of the tape. People that don't know
So there,
some of those activities that they may not be familiar with.
The very first images were of the Michael Severson scholarship. We run a partnership with them and do the Easter egg hunt. So we have a fairly large contingency of EMS safety control officers that come in. From what I understand, they put out 7,000 eggs. I don't know exactly how much poundage of candy was available, but the 7,000 eggs were gone in 11.5 minutes. They blew the siren and then 11 minutes later they were done. And I think we were picked up and gone in 45 minutes after that. It was pretty impressive. Career Day, Carrie, you want to talk about Career Day at all?
well, Career Day, and then in between there, we didn't have footage on it. There was the Feed My Starving Children. These three events were pre-fair. They're community-based and organized, and other community areas can utilize the fairgrounds for that. As Chad said, the first one was a partnership with the emergency service. Feed My Starving Children is a mobile pack where community organizations, schools, they bring people in and they pack the food packets that are dispersed around the world. And then Career Day is a partnership with some of the builders and trades organizations in the county. And they use the fairgrounds and then they bring in, do you have the exact number of school kids? Do you?
It was about 1,100 kids this year.
They bring them in, expose them to the trades, give them a little hands-on experience, as you can see in the video, in hopes that they will pursue that line of work moving forward. So those are the events that are the fairgrounds is utilized for before the fair. We also rented out for some graduations and weddings, and then it's utilized for livestock shows and a lot of 4-H based training that takes place prior to the fair.
Any other questions?
On here.
No. Good.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll bring us to West Cap.
Some handouts here. Morning, my name is Tim Mather. I'm the Associate Director of WestCap. I'm also a former Dunn County Supervisor, and I sat on committees just like this one, so I can appreciate your interest in short presentations. WestCap is a community action agency. There are about 1,100 community action agencies across the United States and 20 in Wisconsin. We all function about the same. We administer state and federal grants. So we operate programs that are typically funded through the state by the federal government. Right now, we're operating about 20 different programs. We have offices based, our main offices in Glenwood City and then our other offices in Menominee. We've been in business since 1966. I passed out a list of programs that have had activity in Polk County specifically in the last 365 days. That list is, I think, about 19 programs long and identifies the number of households we serve and the number of individuals we served. I will get to, I've got a PowerPoint here, obviously. I'll touch on some of the programs, not all. If you have any questions about specific programs, I can answer those at the end. I'll run this, see if I can run it. So Westcap. Can you advance the slide for me, please? Thank you. This is Captown Homes. It's an 8-unit development we built in the 90s. It's in Clayton. One of the things that Westcap does is develop affordable housing. Right now, we manage and own about 200 units across our 7-county service territory. This is one of the properties that we have that's specifically in Polk County. The other property we have, next slide, please, is St. Croix, is in St. Croix Falls. And this is 24-unit townhome complex. This is more comparable to what we have scattered across our service territory. 24-unit townhome complexes, that's what we typically build. We've got another 100 units in St. Croix County, Pierce County that we've been working on developing and have built with the help of our development partner. And hopefully someday we'll build some more housing, affordable housing in Polk County because we need it just about everywhere. Next slide, please. One of the programs that we operate a food pantry in Boyceville. And out of that food pantry, we operate a couple of USDA programs. The one is the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. And this program is a USDA program, as I mentioned. It benefits folks over 60 years old. We have a group of volunteers at our food pantry that assembles boxes of food that are donated to us by various sources, including the USDA. And we distribute those monthly to clients in our entire service territory, but also in Polk County. Next slide, please. Senior Farmers Market vouchers. These are vouchers for folks that are over 60, and they provide a monetary voucher for those clients to go to the farmers markets and obtain fresh produce and other items at a farmer's market at a reduced cost with their voucher. Next slide, please. One of the major programs that we operate is weatherization, which includes emergency furnace and water conservation. And additionally, we operate and administer the Energy Assistance Program. We administer all of these programs for 9 counties. So we added 2 counties to the north, Burnett and Washburn counties, plus our 7 counties that we otherwise serve. We took over energy assistance for Polk County this last year. So we administer that for all of our counties. And energy assistance is really quite a robust program. I can see that in the last year, we've serviced 907 households in your county. Through energy assistance, folks can also be eligible to have their home weatherized. We weatherize generally about 250 units per year, agency-wide. We serviced 132 units in Polk County last year. Weatherization is done very scientifically. We go do an energy audit. We depressurize the house. We use blower doors to measure airflows. We use infrared thermology, identify the compromises in the building envelope. We check bath fan, cubic feet per minute flows. We do all kinds of scientific stuff. Send all that data down to Madison. Those energy geeks look at it over really closely and then tell us what we can do to the house. Typically, we're doing air sealing, insulating. We might upgrade mechanical appliances, so water heater, furnace, try and find something more energy efficient, refrigerator, freezer. So that's typically the scope of work on all of our units. I'll stick on that slide for a second. If you could go back. Emergency furnace is another program that is a function of the energy assistance program. So people that are on energy assistance can possibly be weatherized if we have the ability, time, resources to do it. But if a person that's on energy assistance has no heat from October 1st to May 15th, their furnace or boiler quits working, they call our agency. And if they're actively enrolled in energy assistance, we will have a contractor to their house within 24 hours. And typically we either have a repair or replacement done within 72. So it acts pretty quickly. And we use local contractors. For Polk County in particular, it would be J&N Heating out of Knapp, actually. Beyond that, water conservation, new program. So now we, if we're in the house for other reasons, and we identify a leaky plumbing system or a water heater that's failing or a water heater that has failed, we can make that kind of an emergency repair for the client. Again, if they're on energy assistance. This is our group right here. They're doing a blower door test, energy auditor on the far right. We're doing a furnace inspection in the middle there. We go through 6 semi-loads of insulation a year, doing attic insulation and wall insulation. One of the upgrades that we do typically in a house is we'll take out incandescent bulbs, put in LEDs. Although most people have LEDs, or at least compact fluorescents nowadays. And then again, we'll replace refrigerators and freezers if they're energy inefficient when we get there. Next slide, please. We do operate a, it's called Jumpstart. It's a car repair financing program. So we help clients that need, help with an automobile, find an automobile, finance an automobile, repair an automobile, and provide help with preventative maintenance. Next slide. Adult literacy, pretty robust in your county. It's a one-person show at West Cap. We have one person that administers that. Adult literacy is literally to help people navigate day-to-day life if they don't have an ability to speak English, or if they're, have immigrated from another country. Typically, they're helping people get their GED or get their driver's license, that type of help. Next slide, please. Got a couple of short stories if I have time. What's my time right now? I'll roll with it.
All right, you got a couple minutes, yeah.
All right. This is Stephanie Stark. She operates out of Pierce County, but she provides services in York County, Polk County. These are 3 examples of Polk County specific stories where she helped clients. They're in that packet I handed out to you. I think I'll spare you me reading them to you. But take a look at them. They're great. She is constantly coming up with success stories like that throughout our service territory. People needing help just navigating the system if they can't speak English, helping that. And then also another help for people that want to enhance their skills. So if you could do the next slide, please, I'd appreciate it. Skills enhancement. Stephanie also operates this program. The intent of this program is to take a person that's already working, already speaks English, and help them with their skills to get to the next level of employment so that they might have health insurance benefits, a better stable foundation to build their life on. These are both really good programs because they are programs where the client has to participate in their own success. It's not West Cap just handing out a check, so these are both programs that I feel very strongly about and have great stories to go along with them. Next slide. This is the group. West Cap has about 85 employees and we administer a lot of programs, homeless intervention programs. I didn't mention those. We administer Section 8 programs for 4 counties. So we've got a lot of moving parts and it's busy as a beehive down there in Glenwood City when we're busy. So I'll take any questions you might have.
Anybody?
Do you have any programs going on or potentially in Polk County on housing?
Housing. Well, besides the units that we own, we have different housing programs. So we have Section 8 vouchers that we administer in Polk County. We have Wisconsin Help for Homeowners that we're currently administering, which is the state program to help people that might be in mortgage foreclosure. We have homeless intervention programs. We operate 2 programs here in Polk County, among our other counties. So we have those service programs. we are developing affordable housing units in counties besides Polk County right now. Some of that's just the luck of the draw. You know, all of our counties need affordable housing. It's a pretty hot topic right now. To answer your question specifically, you know, like everything we're doing right now is as much as we can do without developing more units. And that's a pretty long conversation.
I guess maybe a better question would be how do we get more lucky? You know, in Polk County, or what do we have to do to get luckier?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our housing, affordable housing is generally driven by WEDA, Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Association, I believe is the acronym for that, or the name of the acronym.
Yep.
And they, you know, we as an agency, we partner with the development company, Girard Corporation out of La Crosse, and we work as a team to try and create applications for WEDA that score really high. WEDA ultimately decides where our, you know, housing units are built, and by awarding those projects to us, and typically, you know, when I say the luck of the draw, that's generally what I'm talking about. We don't have a lot of control over where that activity occurs. We can try and drive it, you know, but it's based on some fundamentals, and it usually boils down to the bottom line for the developers. So wish I had a better answer for you, a better response. It's the truth of the matter.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you for your service.
And we have West Central Wisconsin Community Action Agency.
Good morning, Scott Allen. I'm the Executive Director of West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Just a little history on regional planning commissions. They were created under by state statute in 1971. So we've been your regional planning commission for over 50 years now. The primary categories of work that we undertake include that list there. I'll spare you that. The handout is just a copy of these slides. There are 9 regional planning commissions in the state of Wisconsin. They're listed here just alphabetically. So you see number 9 there, kind of bronze color, showing the 7 counties that make up West Central Regional Planning. We're governed by a 21-member commission. Appointments are made by each of the 7 member county boards. So there are 3 per county. There's an executive committee as well that kind of handles more administrative day-to-day, month-to-month activities. They consist of 1 appointment per county, so 7-member committee, executive committee. Today is my 3-month anniversary, but I'm glad that I'm not the newest member participating in regional planning. So welcome to Supervisor Jeremy Hall, replacing Sharon Kelly you see here on your list. So already I have to update my summer slideshow. So welcome to the commission. The others representing Polk County include Terry Hauer with your Economic Development Corporation, EDC, and Denise Lallier-Prey, and also on the County Board of Supervisors. Apologize to those who are on the county board because I'll be back here tomorrow night presenting the same presentation. But I'll be joined with, I'll talk about that here momentarily, Regional Business Fund Manager, Toby Lemahieu, and she'll provide a little bit more information on that side of things as well. So it won't be a one-for-one repeat, but be some similar information, some repetition, some additional information as well. Here's just a quick organizational chart of the commission staff. We're now staff of 15. The commission authorized additional senior planner position for this year. That's Ross Petersack. And now we have, again, a staff of 15, including myself. The goal of West Central Regional Planning is to assist units of government in planning for the physical, social, and economic development needs of the region. We strive to do this in 3 different ways. We serve as a coordinating organization. We assist units of government like yourself, as well as your towns, villages, and cities. And we provide technical assistance to those individual units of government as well. We can kind of summarize this into 4 different ways, kind of 4 different areas: economic development, transportation, community development, then also conservation and mapping. In terms of more specific kind of projects, policies, programs that we undertake in each of those areas, you can see that list here. In terms of economic development, much of what we've been doing lately has been focused around kind of project consultation, that 3rd bullet point, grant writing and administration, as well as again, that regional business fund I'll talk about here shortly. Transportation, we've been doing a lot of safe routes to school plans. We have staff members dedicated exclusively to that, as well as ped and bike planning and rural and urban transit plans. In terms of community development, conservation and mapping, again, community development is kind of a larger kind of catch-all for a lot of different things. Hazard mitigation planning, as well as under conservation mapping, water quality planning. I'll talk a little bit about that here shortly, as well as mapping and other plans. This is a lake management plan, of which is we have an example here to share momentarily. So, the reason I did a handout so you hopefully read this a little bit better than just this long list, but these are just a sampling of some of the projects and programs that we've undertaken on behalf of Polk County last year and kind of the first half of this year. So one of those that we recently wrapped up was the Main Street Bounce Back program, which were $10,000 grants awarded to 860 organizations in the region, which again, $8.6 billion. So there are 116 participating in that in Polk County alone. And so over $1 million in those Main Street Bounce Back programs. So again, for a lot of those kind of post-COVID, trying to get some of those programs, businesses kind of jump started or kind of bounce back in terms of Main Street approach. That's where that funding went. Again, we staff the Regional Business Fund at your meeting tomorrow night, or the Board of Supervisors meeting tomorrow night. We'll be presenting a little bit more detail on this. For example, we provided 6 loans totaling almost $300,000 last year, which in total then leveraged almost $2.5 million in private funds, kind of supplementing that or participating with those loans. And then just through the first half of this year, so 6 loans last year, and half of this year, we have another 6 loans gone to Polk County businesses totaling $188,000 with, again, over $2 million in private funds leverage. So we look to see that number increasing through the rest of the year as well. We also participate in the West Central Wisconsin Rail Coalition, supporting future passenger rail service to the region. In coordination with Public Service Commission, we're continue to provide administration outreach to the region's broadband implementation group. They typically meet quarterly, but have been meeting more frequently with some of these other state projects going on as well. We hosted a regional downtown building renovation workshop in Clear Lake on June 8th. We did another one in Owen as well the same week. We prepared several successful grant applications on your behalf for different projects. Polk County Bike and Ped Plan, hazard mitigation funding for the Polk County Hazard Mitigation Plan, DNR Surface Water Grant Program funding for the development of a lake management plan for Staples Lake. That was last year as well. So again, we prepared or are preparing plans for all those applications, including again that Staples Lake Management Plan, Hazard Mitigation Plan, and next year looking to launch the Bike and Ped Plan. We also completed some safe routes to school plans, one for the village of Osceola and one for the city of Amory. And we secured implementation funding to create 3 what they're called traffic calming kits around those schools. Again, kind of implementation side of things with those safe routes to schools plans. And the first one that we've done was in the city of Amory. We've also prepared annual county specific economic profiles, provide those to you as well. If you'd like copies of those, don't have those with me here today, but those are things we put together at the beginning of each year. And we are beginning an update to the Polk County Farmland Preservation Plan as we speak. So with that, kind of the funding side of things, just to give you a little summary of where you've been and where the request is now for next year. Just incremental increases here. 2022, you see the number there, 34,000, just over 35,000 this year, and just over 38,000 for this next year. County service charges, that's what we call these. Again, it's a state statute kind of formula that's utilized based on equalized value. And those are used to provide local match to federal, state, and foundation grants for those regional planning efforts. And also take on regional projects requested by the commission or which will implement the regional comprehensive plan. And to provide technical assistance to counties and local governments within the region. So kind of day-to-day requests for information and assistance kind of on a non-project specific effort. So with that, thank you for your time and your partnership with West Central Regional Planning for the last over 50 years. I'll see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Anybody?
All right, thank you.
All right, that'll bring us to our resolutions. First one is resolution 3423. Resolution to lobby the state to grant broadband access on private roads.
Okay, if I may, this is a resolution geared as a result of feedback from our what we might call a broadband champions meeting, where there are issues with people on private roads sometimes getting access to broadband. And the classic examples that we're talking about are the cases Deer Lake, and also, I think, out by Pipe Lake, are specific cases where they've come to me and said, somebody at the very end of the private road or the beginning of the private road has said, no, you cannot access, you cannot run fiber optic cable, you know, in that road or in that right of way to that house down the road. So the purpose of this is simply a lobbying resolution to go to the state and say, we have an issue here. Now, Malia, correct me if I'm wrong, but utilities, they have granted right away. You can't stop utilities if they need to get to a house. And I don't know that this will be something that they would give the same access to utilities, but it's something the state needs to be aware of, that there are issues with people getting access to broadband, because if one neighbor says, no, you can't have it, they get stopped. So that's the intent of it.
All right. Anyone like to comment on it? We need to move it to the county board. I mean, it can go with or without a recommendation from this committee, whatever the motion is. We have to move it.
Yep. I'll make a recommendation, move it to county board without support of this committee.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Meaning recommending not passing it or just
Correct.
neutral?
Recommending not passing it.
Second.
Anyone like to comment, or we're gonna call the vote otherwise?
I would, if I may. I understand the importance of private rights. Again, the intent is, you think about the number of people who are demanding and wishing and needing, whether it be students, businesses, or whatever. But if you're on a private road, one person, a Russ, could say, sorry, you guys can't have internet. You may be affecting a lot of families here ever getting it because of that. So this isn't saying that, we're not saying that the county or the state has to do this. We're just saying state will do this. Figure out a way to help these people who need or want broadband to get it.
Are you aware of any other counties that are lobbying the state? Or are we the only one?
I don't know if anyone else is lobbying.
Why wouldn't we try to, you know, maybe get this into, what does John take resolutions to the?
WCA.
Down to the county.
Yeah, and see
September.
if we can get more than just us going on a solo in Polk County.
You know,
Try to get it into. I understand, I mean, right, you know, right now, we're not killing it here.
Nope.
We're just saying that, and at this time, the motion is to send it to the county board without a recommendation.
as this is presented, it's not saying that there aren't other options available. This one seems pretty straightforward, and if there's one person, that's it. There's potentially other options other than this particular resolution to solve those problems on an individual basis, so to speak. I think, I don't think one fits all here in this scenario that we're coming up with. Personally.
To answer your question, I think maybe one of the reasons that we haven't, and I haven't searched it, but I'm not aware of other counties doing this yet is frankly, Polk County's probably in the lead in terms of rural counties expanding broadband. So to that point, you know, we've made great progress. So
it is a lucrative business.
You're talking about, you know, utilities having the opportunity to do pretty much what they want on any service. How does this interfere with that mandate?
I don't think this is an essential service.
Not deemed essential at this time.
Well, it's going to be, it sure sounds like it's gonna be.
Well, only
That's
probably
for
the
lawyers to
state
figure out.
could push it to that point. Right now, they can't. I mean, broadband can't push their way in
Into
to
a private
private.
road.
Let's, I mean, we have a motion, we have a second. It's going to county board. So we'll, unless there's more discussion, we'll take a vote on it. All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carries. All right, our next one is 3523, authorizing the creation of the municipal housing partnership program. We want to lead us in that discussion?
yeah, I think if you look at this resolution, you see it's something that we've discussed now for a few months. As a way, it's staff's first attempt to say, here's what we think this could look like. As discussed at the previous meetings, we talked about a $200,000 fund, which would be an interest-free loan for a community to take advantage of. When you say community, a local government that could work with a developer and encourage them, and it may be something, for example, to help them with initial costs, because we've had developers say, for me to get a development going in a neighborhood, I have to do environmental studies, I have to do platting, I have to do mapping. I spend a lot of money, and in the end, it may not work out. So this is the way that if the community is working hand in hand with a developer, the community can say, we want this program to show you we're committed to this. We can offer them a loan to help them pay with some of those early upfront costs. And then when those units get sold, if it's a house or an apartment or whatever, it's $10,000 per unit, gets paid back by the developer to the community back to us. And that's the intent of it.
I make a motion, move to county board with recommendation.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion on the resolution or the motion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. We have one more, well, we have a couple more, but resolution 3823 to support the additional one grant funded position and one budget neutral position in the ADRC.
Okay. I'll let you.
Chair Arcand, I'd be happy to describe what's going on with that. So this is a request from Laura Wagner and the ADRC for two positions, one which is fully grant funded and one which is budget neutral to support some of the transportation initiatives that West Central has helped us examine in the past. So I think there's information in your packet about it, but that's the substance. It's two positions, overall budget neutral for the county to support some of the initiatives of the ADRC.
And what will happen to the grant funded position when the grant is done?
Well, that's a great question, sir. We need to make sure that we track FTEs that are grant funded, and those FTEs are suspended at the end of the grant funding.
And I put that right in the language of the resolution. That the grant funded position is only authorized as long as the grant funding continues. Yep, I did, just because that has been an issue in the past.
Mr. Chair, can someone explain to me how we can have a budget neutral position added?
I can share that with you. This is a consortium of multiple counties. And this was previously housed, I believe, in Burnett County, and it was in their budget. It's going to be in Polk County, but it will be the same funds that are from the state that are paying for it in Burnett County. We're just moving it to be housed here in Polk because it makes more sense.
The other thing in clarification here, it says that I read that the grant isn't fully funded, it's only funded at 80%.
Correct. So we would be responsible for that 20%. Yes.
So it's a little bit misleading the way it's written up front here.
If I could, well, we've got confirmation from Laura Wagner that she has sufficient resources within her budget to cover that allocation. So,
Which is ADRC, not Polk County.
All right, looking for a motion.
Motion to move it to the county board.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. All right, well, the budget update.
thank you, Chair Arcand. Claire, if you could cue up the presentation. Well, as I indicated last month, it's budget season. A little presentation to support our discussion. Claire, if you go to the third slide in the presentation. In your packet that is covering this presentation, I'd just like to point out that we do have a list of the requests, the asks of the outside agencies, both those from the July meeting, the 4 that presented then, as well as the 4 that are presented today for your review. The administrator and I will be reviewing this list, and as part of the budget presentation next month, you'll hear our thoughts on the funding for these, but we're also interested in what you have to say, of course. So I suppose that could either be discussed here or in the administrator's report. This is a component of the budget, so I think it's fair game, but that would be up to Chair Arcand.
Your question is whether or not we're going to discuss the budget and outside agencies.
Well, I prepared this for the board's consideration after the presentations. You can choose to discuss it now if you'd like. I could also bring it up as part of I've got an agenda item budget. And so this, to my way of looking at it, is part of the budget discussion, but it's up to you about when you want to discuss it.
I think we'll put it agenda for the next meeting and have a opportunity for everyone. We just got them today, and
Claire, can you advance 2 slides, please? This is just a sort of scene setter for what's coming up over the next couple of months. In a few weeks, we're going to be working with committees to discuss the overall budget and how the impact of the budget on the departments and divisions that are under their review. That's the 5th of September through the 14th. The administrator will provide a budget overview to the full board on the 14th of September. So sort of got the full board at the top and we've got committee work below. Early in October, we'll go back to committees with budget specifics. And then on the 17th of October is the presentation of the draft budget and discussion of that. We're required by statute to publish the budget shortly thereafter in the paper, to queue up a discussion on the 21st of November for the public discussion. And then it's your opportunity to approve the budget that same day, a little later. Any questions about the overall schedule here? So you've been seeing a version of this slide for a couple of months now, situational variables that we're looking at as we prepare the budget. On the expense side, we're going into an expensive year with respect to pay and benefits. Right now, those are likely to be up more than $1.5 million over 23. We've got about $700,000 in new funding requests. These aren't related to employees, so operating non-employee expense. And then requests, capital requests, depending on you take the low estimate or the high estimate, a little over $1.5 million up to a little over $2 million. On the revenue side, the governor and the legislature, as we've talked about before, are sending a little over $500,000 to us this year, and every year indexed to sales tax from now on out until they change their mind. We're doing better with investments than we have in the past. Rates are better. This isn't necessarily recurring. The situation changes and we can't earn as much as on our money. That number won't be as high, but we're forecasting a pretty good 2024 in terms of investment income. I've mentioned to this body before that in the past, we've been extremely conservative budgeting sales tax. Our investment advisors are counseling us that it is reasonable to add about $400,000 to that sales tax estimate. And then we'll have about the same as last year in terms of additions from net new construction. If you add the red up and then you subtract the green, it's a belt tightening year. So go to the next slide. We've been asking all departments and divisions to look at hiring, and let's be careful about non-critical hiring in this year and in 2024. Let's figure out how we can flatten or reduce non-employee operating expense. Traditional sort of moves. Revenue side strategy, we're going to work to recover costs where possible. Seek enhanced revenue from our enterprise and other ways, behavioral health clinic. Pursue additional outside grants and consider funding at least some of those capital projects with either bonding or assets that are in the general fund. So that's the revenue side. Any questions so far?
Morning. I have a 10 o'clock appointment for passport stuff.
This is actually for the next item. So are there questions about the budget, where we stand with it so far? Any of our processes?
I would just say, Don and really all of the directors have done a great job. They've really applied pressure and coaching, so to speak, to monitor expenses and reduce those as much as possible. And even so, as Don said, it's going to be a belt tightening year, but the directors have really stepped up in that regard. So hats off to you and your teams.
Good.
Was a lot of the increases in the wages you were talking, is that because of the wage study you did?
That's a great question, sir. So we've allocated in the current model about 5% for cost of living increase plus merit. And then we've allocated around 400,000 to dealing with the most significant issues that come up out of the wage study. And on August 18th, we'll have our first meeting sort of post kickoff with the consultants, and they'll reveal to us what they're seeing in terms of the overall landscape. And perhaps we'll have a few indicators about some of the outliers, things that we really need to focus on. But we don't have the agenda for that meeting. We're listening to what they have to say, but I think we will get some information on August 18th about what we're going to need to have in reserve to cover that wage study, not just in 2024,
Is that
but in
what you're
subsequent years.
basing your 1.5 million on what you're hearing?
Well, that 1.5 million is largely due to the COLA and the increased expenses related to healthcare. So that's why I have the greater than sign in there.
And I thought our healthcare, we were so far ahead of it that we were almost not going to have to fund it for a while. Whatever happened with that?
We had a very bad health claims year in 2022, and that is continuing in 2023. Our actuaries are telling us not to expect any change in 2024, given they can't tell us about specifics. They can tell us about the trends with our own plan. And so we've really had a substantial, a series of substantial decrements to our health fund balance. Our partners from CLA will be up in a little while to talk about the audit and to give some sort of broader context with that health fund. If it would please the committee, I do have a slide that I could show about what's happened to the health fund over time, if that's of interest. But the general idea is that we have had really significant hits in terms of
Don't we
claims.
have stop loss though, where
Yes, sir.
we can only take so much of a hit
That's correct. So we have stop loss at $200,000.
for each case?
Yes, per year. And the issue for us has been the increase in sort of medium level claims. So there's a tier from 35,000 in claims up to 199,000 plus. And the number of claims in there has more than trebled over the last 3 years. So we're kind of getting hit in the middle, kind of a gut punch. So you might ask, what are we doing in response to that? Well, we're looking at whether our stop loss level is the right level. You know, some counties have lower, some have higher. So that's something we're investigating.
And then do we have a max out of pocket per year that can come out of the fund?
Yes, yes. So if we have aggregate claims against that stop loss policy, then we start funding again. And we have not hit that.
Question, I mean, is there a maximum that could be taken from the fund in a year before we're insured not to lose it all?
It's just per policy. It's not.
No, there's no max total.
Technically, you could wipe the whole fund out in a year?
Could we wipe the whole fund out in the year? Well, we have requirements to keep a certain amount in the health fund in any given year to cover actuarially what the projected expense is likely to be. And that's currently about 2.7. So that's sort of the floor, is that we have to keep at least 2.7 in that fund. But we've really ratcheted it down because of these claim years, these tough claim years. So we were at 8.1 million, I think, the year 2021, and we're down about 1.5 million, 2 million over that minimum level right now.
But to answer your question, it's not like we're sitting in a vacuum. So, for example, we are looking at what are some ways to address healthcare expenses. For example, unnecessary emergency room visits. You know, instead of paying minuscule amount of money, you're paying $800 to $1,400 to do a thing, you know. We're trying to change some of our policies to give them an alternative to going to the emergency room. You know, it could be a telehealth, Zoom telehealth, it could be a phone call, it could be online, that type of thing. The other thing we look at are expenses of procedures and which hospitals give us a good deal and which ones ratchet it up there. We have access to people experts who can say, you can get a higher quality outcome for a knee replacement, and it will cost less. And we'll give you, you know, so those are the types of things we're investigating with intensity now.
Well, it's just when you start talking $1.5 million in costs for benefits and wages, the trend probably isn't going the other way. So, you know, if we're looking at taking money out of the general fund to fund this year, will we be doing the same?
I can address
in the
that, sir.
years to come?
Yeah, we, dispositionally, we're very disinclined to support operations with the general fund. So if we come with a request for dollars from the general fund, it would be to fund capital projects.
Yeah. Well,
So
we still gotta fund the wages and benefits.
that's correct. That's absolutely the case, sir.
All right. So even on the health insurance side, I mean, are we looking at maybe the day of being self-funded health insurance is too much for us?
I don't think we're there yet. I think we've hit a stretch here that has kind of caught us. You know, whether it caught us or if it just happened, I think we can reverse that. May take us a couple of years, but we can kind of develop a policy and an approach that will balance that out a little bit. You know, for a while, we were building up that fund, and now we've had a couple of years where it's really sapped into that. But I do think our health plan is somewhat outdated, so we're gonna be making some changes to it.
Anybody, your presentation done or?
It is, sir. Yes, if I get asked questions from about the fee schedule, I'll be happy to pop right back up here, though.
Are we at that? We are. Are we good on the budget update?
Yep.
All right, so we can then have a discussion and action regarding 3323 for 2024 master fee schedule.
Or it would be helpful if I provided an update of what we've done since the last time we were here.
Do you mean the fee increases?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd probably be very helpful.
Okay, so Claire, do you mind queuing up the next slide? So this is similar, if not identical, to what you saw last month, but I recognize there's new folks on the committee. In the 2023 budget, going back to 2022, across all fees, there are 441. And for 2023, that's the current year budget, we saw 63 increases, about 14% of the total. So 86%, we didn't increase. During that period of time, the consumer price index was up substantially, and our employee costs were up as well. Next slide. So in our financial policy, fees must not exceed the cost of providing the good or service. You all or the board can make exceptions to that if you choose. And where possible, departments are to estimate costs. Next slide. So when we're thinking about the fee schedule that sits in front of us, we've really got two options in terms of determining whether the fee is justifiable. One is we assume that the current fee, in this case, the 2023 budget fee, is an accurate representation of what the fee ought to be. And then we use some credible resource to increase, in the case of an inflationary economy, increase the fee. We can also execute a time and material study to determine what it really costs to drive the truck out, send the employee to look at whatever the employee is looking at, make notes, bring it back, and then execute the fee. Parts of our organization are really good at number two, and I would say environmental services would be in that group. It's otherwise challenging to do a time and material study, particularly if you have 441 fees. So we often rely on strategy number one. If you look in your packet, you'll see a redlined fee schedule that shows the changes that departments and divisions have come up with since we last met.
I'm not sure what pile that would be.
Yes, sir. It would be in the agenda pile.
In the back.
Oh,
behind the resolutions.
Yeah, I must not even have that. I have an agenda.
We can provide that to you, sir.
Is it laying up there?
Go to the next slide in the meantime. So after our last meeting, where you endorsed the idea of us looking at the fee schedule, admin asked departments and divisions to look at their fees. And if they weren't raised and they're not otherwise set by statute, we asked departments and divisions to consider raising the fees by 5%. This is in general. That's what you see in your packet. Some fees exceed 5%, and there's some rationale why. Some are less than 5. Many are 5, and many were not changed.
Well, we'll definitely get another shot at this, and I know everybody's going through and reading them right now, but I mean, our job is really to get this to the county board. And everybody, and I don't think it's to be trying to make changes to the fee schedule here.
Will the rest of the board supervisors receive that read prior to the meeting?
this one,
Yes.
they should.
The meeting is tomorrow.
So they haven't seen that yet.
I'm looking at our clerk to, wonder if that is in the full board
I
pack.
can't remember, but I can look at it really quick.
I just think it'll be helpful in that discussion tomorrow if they've had a chance to view it ahead of time.
You bet. Kind of short notice through.
Well, it usually goes through every committee, doesn't it? So the
And it has.
Yes.
committees are discussing it and talking whether or not they feel it should be raised. And
Are you saying this would go to committees before it goes to the county?
I'd say it's already
It already
done.
has, gone through, so like the zoning permit fees have already gone through the
Oh,
environmental
yeah.
services committee and.
But I see there's some in here that I didn't recognize. Maybe it's my mind, but
So because of the timing, our meeting is, we're probably the last one to see it.
That's correct.
Got it.
okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and Supervisor Olson requested that we prepare a red line version, and that's what's in your packet. So a particular committee wouldn't have necessarily seen the fees that weren't connected to the departments and divisions in their committees.
The whole concept of fees is there are certain that are set by statute. There are others where the fees are for a service, like, a sewer inspection fee. And if you don't raise the fees to cover the cost of providing that service, then what you're really doing is saying all the rest of the taxpayers, the levy dollars, are going to supplement and help lower that cost for the actual user of the fee. So.
Make a motion, move it to county board.
Any more discussion on the fees? Not all's in favor,
All right.
carries. All right, how about an update regarding housing?
I think we pretty much discussed that with the resolution that we were forwarding on. So I think that was a standing thing, because we don't. need to-
Yeah, just to, if there was something new on it. All right, how about an annual audit result?
Okay, we have our guest speaker.
Discussion.
Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Jonathan Sherwood. I'm a principal with Clifton Larson Allen. I'm responsible for the conduct of the audit as well as the presentation of the annual financial statements. So instead of going through the 150 plus page document, I've got about a 15-page handout here. It's the executive audit summary. So hopefully everybody has that in front of them. I unfortunately don't have an electronic version of it, so low tech is the way to go with the backup resource of the full audit report here on my computer, only if needed. So, as Don mentioned earlier, I can give a lot of context as to some of the other conversations we were having with the self-funded health insurance, and then just kind of some broader budgeting theory, I guess, as we go forward. So I'll give some context as we go along. So just to start off, again, I guess want to just express my gratitude to county employees, the various department heads, Sherry and everybody in the finance department. Obviously, we're kind of a thorn in their side for a little bit of the year here, asking a lot of pertinent information that we need to conduct the audit, which obviously relates back to a fiscal year that, is done and over with in 2022. And here we are most of the way through 2023. It just takes a lot to get everything we need in order to put it into the form and fashion of the audit report. So thank you to finance staff, all the various department heads, and a lot of the employees within those departments asking for all these, grant type information that we need as they're trying to also serve, the general public at large as well. If anybody has any questions as I go along, please feel free to stop me. I can address what I can here off the cuff, so to speak. Don's also here to jump in and help me out on that aspect as well. Otherwise, if I do need to rely on Sherry and the various finance staff like Rhoda as well, I can get those answers for you and return them to you here, hopefully in short order. So before I jump into any actual pertinent financial information, on page 1 of the executive audit summary, just basically lays out basically the first and foremost, the job of the exterior independent auditor, CLA. Our job is to come into the audit, or come into the county, take a look at the organization in total and express an opinion over the financial statements as you see them. So in that big book that we have over there, truly the only thing that quote unquote CLA owns is a 3 to 4 page letter at the very front of it. What is our opinion over the audited financial statements? So our goal is to issue an audit opinion known as an unmodified or a quote unquote clean opinion that the amounts in the disclosures within your financial statements are free of any material error or misstatement. So from that standpoint, that's the audit opinion that we've issued. Everything in here is as accurate as we can possibly be at this point. And that's obviously our goal that we're trying to achieve. Within our audit opinion, we actually we set aside, it's called an emphasis of matter paragraph. So to bore you with some of the long-winded explanation there's some significant changes that can occur from one year to the next in the accounting profession, in the GASB world, the Government Accounting Standards Bureau, which basically sets all of the rules, the accounting laws that we have to abide by. So in 2022, there was a significant one known as GASB 87, just deals with how the county or how governmental agencies have to report any lease activity. In the past, there was more or less a rental agreement. You'd only have to include the amounts that you have to pay in any one given year. In 2022, we had to basically back up to the inception a lot of these leases, and now they're more or less long-term financing agreements, which, not to bore you, but the gist of it is it takes a lot of effort and additional reading of very boring and lengthy contracts to get down to the nitty-gritty and actually address the standard. So again, thank you to the finance staff that did a lot of that gathering of all of those lease agreements, did some of the initial run through of, okay, does this actually qualify for all these steps? Gave it to our team, which then we could actually do the testing and the implementation of this long-winded statement, which you will see very briefly mentioned on page 7 of my presentation here. So there is another one that is in process for 2023. It's going to be just as much fun as the GASB 87 was. It's known as GASB 96, which is software-based information technology agreements, also known as CIBITAs. Just so you know, you'll be hearing a little bit more about that from me next year. The only reason I bring it up is because it takes a lot of time and effort on our end to get it incorporated into your financial statements. As part of our audit, we also have to take a look at the organization at large and what the internal control structure is of the county. So that's all of your checks and balances within your financial statements or within your financial system and just the total operations. And when we notice there's different things within your internal control structure, if they raise to a level that we need to be, make the governance committee aware of them, we're required by accounting policies to basically bring them up to you. And then we issue a standalone report on them. So these are very similar findings, so to speak, that we issue on counties that are, about Polk County size and basically all of our counties. And it's definitely not any red flags for you to be, that you need to be reactionary towards. It's more or less just knowing that these are issues within your organization and just certain things to pay attention to. So again, these are repeat findings. We reclassify them as material weaknesses. Just be aware that they exist, and that there's certain steps that we need to take as a board on a county board level to mitigate their existence. So number one is material audit adjustments. That's basically when we come in as CLA and do your audit, we're proposing journal entries to your financial system in order to get them in the form and fashion that we're required to in order to issue our audited financial statements. So it's not necessarily just the number of journal entries that we make, but it's also the size and the scale of those journal entries as well. So in 2021's audit, we actually made 28 journal entries, where in 2022, we actually reduced that number down to 19. So it is an improvement, but obviously the size and the scale or the scope of those entries is still large enough, which I still need to report them back to you. So the good news is we're making fewer audit adjustments, and we're working closely with the finance department just to, in an ideal situation, we'd eliminate them all. But obviously there's certain things that we need to work with together in order to get that information, in order to get those get those auditing adjustments down to what we need them to be, the dollar amount, so to speak. So we're working very closely with them in order to still identify if we can drive that number down even further. And then the other one that we always are basically gonna be stuck with in an organization your size is limited segregation of duties. So you can take a look at kind of the directive that we've put out there and kind of forming that general government, government center type operating system where you're trying to, put more and more operations in one central location so you can have more checks and balances and basically use more of the county resources in that one department. But for this specific one, we also have to take a look at all of the various departments throughout the county. So even in your very small departments where you might only have one or maybe possibly two people in those departments, they're still in total control of things like receipting, reporting back to state agencies and that sort of thing. So there isn't that much backup or detail in some of your small departments. So for that reason, we're still always going to issue a limited segregations of duties finding and bringing it up to the county board level and the administration level, just so you know that, yes, you are a large organization, you have great controls over certain departments, your more sensitive departments like your finance department, your highway departments, Golden Age Manor for your nursing home, but then also you are in integral control, key control aspect at the county board level. When you're asking very pertinent directed questions about budgeting or approving of certain expenditures, approving hiring things, that is a very integral part of county board operations. So because of the limited segregations of duties, what is our response as an audit firm saying, we recognize this is a material weakness of your organization. What are you doing to combat this limited segregations of duties? It's the very integral day-to-day input from an oversight committee in order to mitigate that risk. So yes, it exists. We're acknowledging that, but the general board in total is doing something to remedy or address that issue. Also, as part of our auditing procedures, we have to go through and do what's known as a compliance audit or a single audit. And that's just due to a federal regulatory and a state regulatory issue. If you get certain level of funding from federal agencies or from state agencies, we have to go in and say, okay, this is the requirement of what that specific grant program states. Let's go in and see how the county actually is operating that program. So that single audit report is a complete schedule of all the federal and state grants and those programs. We haven't officially issued our final report yet on that. We're just kind of dotting our I's and crossing some T's in that respect. So it's an ongoing finalization of that report. But to date, there are no known issues, and I don't expect any compliance findings that need to be reported back to any agencies. It's more or less just getting the additional standalone report in its proper formatting at this point, and we just weren't able to get that completely issued at this point. So I bring that up just to let you know that it is not yet officially issued at this time. We have until September 30th to make that reporting back to the federal government, which I expect that to be done here in short order. There are a few other standalone services that we provide at CLA in assistance with various county departments. So number one is obviously we do compile and actually build the financial statements with your finance department. They do review them and take ownership over them and say if there's anything materially missing, they have the skills, knowledge, and experience to notice you forgot this footnote, you forgot this major disclosure. But we are also we're the ones that basically produce the document for you up front. So we're able to assist in that, and that's more or less a housekeeping item. It does make the finalization a lot cleaner. We have all the information on our side versus you guys having to duplicate those efforts. Next, we also help compile the highway annual reports with Mo and Carrie and that staff in order to make that reporting down to DOT in those proper prescribed forms down to them. We also then have to report to the Wisconsin DOR. There's two separate filings that they require for the financial report form is what that's known as. The first reporting to them in the spring is an unaudited version. We basically take your raw data, make some various adjustments down to them so they cannot ask so many pointed questions throughout their review process. And then we follow that up with an audited financial report form that's due July 31st, which we make sure that that one is always met because that one comes with some pretty significant severe financial penalties if it's delayed. So all of those reportings have now been done at this point with, again, the final report that we also have to issue is that data collection form for the single audit, which that one, again, is in the final process, making that report back to the federal government there. Any questions on all the various reports that we have to issue before I jump into some of the more pertinent financial detail here for you? To really jump right into things here, the first item in your report packet is the general fund. So this just lists all of the general activities of county operations that aren't required to be issued anywhere else. They're all included in what we call the general fund. So there's been quite a bit of talk here this morning of where are we at in order to, as we project into, we're already looking forward to 2024 and that budgeting process. So to give a little context to us, we basically issued or have three separate highlighted rows within this section. The top being the unassigned fund balance, the middle one being expenditures, and then the final one being a percentage of unassigned fund balance to general fund expenditures. So to give context to what we're going to be looking at here, we've got some information that goes from 2019 through 2022. It just kind of shows some historical trends in this data. And as you can see in 2022, the first shaded column is that unassigned fund balance. And what we have there, those are your true reserves of the county fund balance, your equity that you could use for a future period. We struggling to find what we're looking at right there? I can give you some time to catch up because there'll be some facts and figures here which can kind of make your head spin a little bit. I'm on page number 2 for you, about midway down the page. There's some highlighted rows for you. So when we're talking fund balance in that whole subsection, fund balance in total, again, these are the reserves, these are your carryovers that you're going to use that as a result of what happened in all prior periods and ending in 2022, what we can use these reserves for going forward. There's a number of different categories and classifications we have for these reserves. First being non-spendable items. It's already either spent or we have to do something in order to collect those resources and make them available to be used in a future period. So for our purposes, I don't even look at that column. It's not something I can use to budget for in a future period. Next item is our restricted number or restricted balance. This is a restriction placed by an outside agency. So a federal or a state agency gave us some money, for instance. We haven't spent it all for that specific purpose, so we can't rely on it in order to meet operational usage. The next item is known as committed fund balances. So these are commitments that the county board at large had placed. We're gonna put financial restrictions on these dollar amounts or these balances to be used for such and such purpose, and it cannot be used for anything else without a physical a change in board policy. That's what I'm looking for. So it requires formal action in order to move those purposes to something else. The next type of fund balance is assigned fund balance. So again, those are more or less formal action that the board has taken, but it's given that direction down to dedicated people such as Don and the finance staff to say, here's the purpose that we want. Maybe the dollar amount isn't known at that specific time. So that's an assignment that management can make. And this is the set asides, again, underneath the direction of the board, but it's a little bit less stringent. And then all that filters down to the unassigned. So what can be used to meet the future obligations of county operations? So we ended the year with about $31.7 million in our unassigned fund balance. So what does all that mean? How do we compare apples to apples versus, from one organization to the next? How is Polk County doing at large? So we take a look at what the total general fund expenditures are. How much does it cost to actually operate the whole county in its general operations for the entire year? So that's why I have that other highlighted row down there of the total expenditures. In 2022, it cost about $31 million to operate everything underneath the umbrella of the general fund. So we compare that to now what do we have set aside in our fund balance and say, okay, what is that unassigned fund balance percentage wise? And it filters down to that last roll down there. We're actually funded for an entire year. We have 102% of our general operating costs already sitting there in fund balance. So to give that some context from an outside agency such as an independent auditor or a bond rating or somebody like that, they're going to say, what do we want that number to be? And the typical general rule of thumb is at a minimum, you want it to be about 33% or upwards of 50%. And we as an outside agency would look at that and say, this is a fairly healthy, fiscally responsible county. That's 33 to 50%. You're obviously far exceeding that at this point. So to give that a little bit more, okay, let's look at now the benefit of hindsight here is 2020. We're already standing here in August of 2023. What has already taken place in 23 that can impact these numbers? So number one, before I get there, your county policy, internal county policy, is you want that minimum number in your county board policy to be at 50% of general fund expenditures. So that 50% of general fund expenditures is roughly $15.6 million is what you want to sit there as a good cushion set aside. You want to be, basically, you want to promote to say that we're fiscally healthy, and there's some advantage to that, which I'll mention here in a second. So now we're looking at, okay, we obviously, 31.7 is definitely still greater than the 15.6 that we're kind of trying to target internally. So what has happened in 2023 now that can help explain some of this? There's already been some 2023 earmarking and set asides for 2023, as Don was saying, capital items. When it comes to your reserves, it's very advantageous, or the recommendation is to basically draw down any reserves on capital items versus living off of operations for a few years. You never want to basically, it's poor budgeting planning to always operate and have recurring operating expenditures come out of and be reliant on unassigned fund balance. Because obviously over time those reserves will dry up. So in 2023, you've already set aside and have accounted for about $12 million in 2023 projects that have come or will be coming or plan to be coming out of that unassigned fund balance. So in all honesty, you're basically looking at that $31.7 million in just a rough estimate, kind of, I haven't exactly, run it all down exactly at this point. So it's a little bit of a ballpark number. You're at current rates at 2022, we basically exceeded our minimum fund balance policy by approximately $4 million is where I'm seeing 2022 come in at after you take into what came into account in 2023. So keep all of that in mind here for future presentations of when you're looking at your 2024 budgeting presentations and all the information coming out of your finance department. They're working very hard to give you a much more pinned down number there as to truly what are your reserves. And again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend by any means living off of those reserves for an extended period of time, such as the previous comments of funding an additional position that's budget neutral or something like that to that effect, and purely funding that out of any reserve number. So before I go any further on that, again, the benefit of having a county board policy that states that you've got a 50% minimum there in fund balance, what does that allow you to do from a budgeting standpoint? It gives you a lot of flexibility, which is very advantageous. It gives the flexibility when it comes to those major capitalization policies or projects that are on the horizon. gives you various different ways of actually financing those. Some of that could come out of your reserves, right? One-time capital projects help fund some of those long-term capital needs. And then it also then from an outside borrowing agency perspective, it gives you much more favorable interest rates is usually the biggest cost savings when it comes to those. Usually get a much better, more favorable borrowing rates. And then lastly, it completely avoids any need for any short-term borrowing needs because obviously the real estate tax collection, property tax collection process is cyclical in nature. You're going to have certain times of the year where you're flush with cash and other times of the year where you might be a little bit lighter on cash. And some government agencies, believe it or not, need to actually borrow in order to make payroll at various times of the year. Usually don't see that very often at the county level, but with a very healthy fund balance, that's not even a question. You're completely avoiding any additional unnecessary interest rates or interest costs at that point. Any questions on the general fund that I can answer at this point? Moving on to additional special revenue funds. So these are all in their own separate funding reporting categories within your audit report. And they're special revenue funds because the revenue sources that come into those funds are restricted for these primary purposes. The first two that we see on the bottom of page 2 are Children and Families and Health Services Fund. Those two are reporting a zero fund balance, which that is a county board policy that at the end of the year, if there's any surplus and or deficit, that gets closed out to the general fund. And that's an internal county board policy. There are certain years where if it runs a major deficit, the general fund has to contribute over to them to zero them out. Or in these cases, in 2022, they're actually quote unquote good years for those two departments or those two functions where they actually had to transfer out back to the general fund. So in 2022, it was a $751,000 and a $340,000 transfer back to the general fund respectively for Children's and Family and Health and Human Services. And again, these are year-end reserve numbers, which will be used to fund future operations for these various activities. So from this standpoint, I would encourage looking at a trend. If there's a drawdown in any fund balance, obviously that fund is underperforming or there's a planned spend down of those reserves for a specific reason. So if you're seeing an activity that it's continually in the negative or is, significantly decreasing, that should raise some red flags as to ask the question, what are we doing about that? Don, let's defer to you and ask what that specific fund is doing. Is this planned? Do we know about it? What's something special or kind of crazy, so to speak, that's going on in that fund? And we can address those at that time. So obviously the biggest one that jumps off the page for me is the Recycling Center Fund. Obviously that was started in 2020 and it's basically still catching its legs, so to speak, of what is the activity going to be going into that fund? Where is that at? What should our potential fee schedule that we were talking about, what should that be? What are the long-term capital needs of that total activity? So you can see that it's varied in the first year of operations. It was running at a deficit of 111,000, showed some improvement in 2021, and then it's kind of backsliding here in 2022 with probably more increased operating costs. Because obviously the benefit of a trend analysis is you can have some outlier years like 2020 and 2021, when COVID is going to be my excuse for literally everything that happens in those years, which I'll be mentioning here in a little bit. COVID definitely impacted government operations extensively. Any questions on the special revenue funds? Then I can jump right into item number 3, which is your debt service fund. You do have one debt service fund that you run that run through the county financial system, and this is responsible for just making all of the principal and interest payments through the year. There is reserves in this fund at the end of the year, which then what those reserves will be used for is meeting future debt service needs. I've got some additional comments here on your debt service here on the next page, so I'll skip over any additional commentary there for you. Jumping right into the capital projects funds. Now, these are all of the various capital projects that are going on at the county during 2022. So the total that's left over in those funds that will be used for these operations is 1.9 million. And the various projects that are going on, still going on out there. You have the grandstand project, the recycling center, Parks and Rec, and then the government center remodel. So all 4 of those activities are tracked separately in your books, with the main one obviously that's contributing to that such a large balance here at 2022 is being the recycling center remodel or construction, any activity that's gonna be associated with that. For again, major capital items is gonna come out of, or gonna be reported in that recycling center fund. To switch gears a little bit, item number 5 here on page 3 is we're starting to talk about the enterprise funds of the county. So now these are more or less known as business type activities. So any business owners in the room or anybody else watching this is what your true financial statements would look like in a business setting versus the governmental accounting we were just talking about earlier. So you're gonna see a lot more items within your balance sheet here on page 3, such as long-term debt, capital assets, and some various items that need to get allocated over here. So just some commentary here of talking about additional things that'll impact these numbers for comparability when you're looking at other departments. So number 1, again, looking at the trend analysis, the major issue is going to be looking at the year of 2020, comparing it to 2021. Because you look about halfway down the page under the net position number, and you can see that your number jumps from, again, your reserves of your Golden Age Manor went from 2.4 million up to 4.7 million dollars basically overnight, so to speak, in 1 year. That's a pretty significant change. So the major 2 items that happened obviously was the PPP loan that was on the books in 2020. The loan was forgiven in 2021, so it all hit as revenue. I think that was somewhere in the range of about $707,000, $777. In total PPP proceeds that came in 2021. And then as a response to COVID, obviously, you've got a lot of COVID and ARPA funding that came into Golden Age Manor in 2021. And again, all of that, those reserves, the intent with those at the time was to be used and set aside for capital items and meet any short-term operational needs. Golden Age Manor in total is still operating under the difficulty, and as all nursing home and healthcare facilities are, of shortage of qualified staffing and finding full-time permanent staffing at the facility versus the unfortunate need is to use basically like the traveling nurses that are coming around, and those costs are exorbitant. I was shocked when I was starting to see some of those numbers. So the operational costs of Golden Age Manor remain incredibly high in order to provide that service, and staffing is probably the number 1 driver of those costs. So as we go all the way down on the 2022 column, you've got some income and loss before capital. The change in net position is the very bottom number there. In total, again, the 2021 jumps off the page because you had a very, very good year with a lot of additional COVID funding that hit the all in 1 year. And now you're kind of quote unquote back into typical usage of running at about a $39,000 change in net position. So there is some, the full accounting act here is just so there is additional information in that number that is accounting transactions, they're non-cash transactions. So there's some items in there that don't necessarily factor into operations. And the reason I bring that up is because it is, unfortunately, is painting a rosier picture than what's actually occurring and going on out at Golden Age Manor. So most people are very familiar with the concept of depreciation, right? That's an additional expense. You've already bought the equipment, you're depreciating it over time. So that's an expenditure. So that's actually hurting that bottom line number. And I'm saying that that depreciation number is already in that negative 39,000. So yes, there's other things in there that unfortunately are helping out the operations of the Golden Age Manor. The biggest portion of that is being WRS, so the Wisconsin Retirement System. So it sounds kind of counterintuitive here, but the state of Wisconsin, the WRS system is extremely well funded, and technically it's overfunded at the state level. So what we do, we have to come in and follow GASB rules, take what the total system is down at Madison. Here's Polk County's amount of this total asset that's now your portion of this asset, and we carve up who at the county is participating in this program. Golden Age Manor is part of it. So we take the total amount for Polk County and allocate some over to the nursing home. So the reason that this is looking a little bit more rosy is because it's actually showing $388,000 income, which is it's adding to that balance. So if you take that out, you're basically running at a negative of, at a minimum of the 388,000 plus the $39,000 loss. So you're operating at quite a significant loss there because you're basically essentially getting bailed out just because you participate in WRS. And you cannot use that WRS asset for anything else. It's strictly on paper operation wise. So not to get too much into the weeds there for you, but it's definitely an item, I'm sure it's well on everybody's mind. Each manner operationally, is a challenge that just tells the full story of why on paper, the auditor's coming in and saying, it's, you got $4.7 million sitting there. Of that total amount, 1.6 million of that total dollar amount is restricted for WRS, cannot be used for anything else. Any questions on any of that? So I can breeze through the next one pretty quickly. The only other business type activity you had on your books actually came off your books in 2020. And that was the operation of the Lime Fund with the sale and closure. The final closeout in 2021 was made. And it was a total of $1.3 million that went back into various governmental activities. I know that there's some parks and trails information or parks and trails purposes. And then I think there's maybe one or two other uses for those dollar amounts. But that was done and over with in 2021. So there's no activity to report in 22. You also then operate what are known as internal services funds. And this is where Mo and Carrie and his staff pull together a lot of this information for us, which is then reviewed and audited for the highway department. And again, it's a similar type story there for the change in net position. You've got about a $7,000, essentially a break even for the year. And again, the similar type story there is that you had in GAM as you do in the highway fund is WRS is also helping that out as well. So if you take that piece out, you would be operating at a little bit of a loss there for you in the highway department as well, which is very similar to what was experienced in 2021. Further discussion on page 5 here for your internal services fund. This is where some of the questions earlier that Don was alluding to kind of gives a little bit more context as to the operations of the health insurance fund. And you do see that it was built up from 2019 all the way to 2021. And I do have a clerical error. It was my mistake in the 2022 column. The net position number of 6.19 is correct. That is what your ending net position or reserves number is. But the income before transfer, it's showing a positive 1.9 million. That should be a negative. I missed the negative sign. I apologize. So that is a decrease of $1.9 million that the fund experienced in 2022. So again, to give context, I've been giving this presentation for a number of years, and it was always your health insurance fund is doing extremely well. Is there a plan to start spending some of that down? And I know from the hiring of consultants, working with actuaries, it was trying to keep the total amount of premiums that are being charged out to employees down as much as possible. And you were still experiencing low claim levels, historically low claim levels. And even in the time period of COVID, where a lot of people weren't going to the doctor, nobody was getting sick, we were all staying home. 2021, you had still a very positive year. You added $829,000 to that fund. Well, as we were just mentioned earlier, we experienced a terrible year in terms of total claims, because you lost in 1 year 1.9 million. So part of that was a planned spend down. We knew that our healthcare claims were going to be higher and the costs were going to be greater, and we planned to not increase the premiums to employees. Obviously that occurred and we experienced extremely high claim levels. So it dropped it down from 8.1 down to 6.1 million that's left over in reserves for the health insurance fund for 2023. And it's my understanding, I haven't audited that number, but 2023 activity is on par with what was experienced in 2022. So as you can see, the planned spend down is working, which is now, the sky isn't necessarily falling, so to speak, but it does require some action now. So going back all the way to the beginning of my presentation of limited segregations of duties, and you see something, be more proactive versus reactionary. It's kind of a mix of both here. We're seeing the trend, but you're asking the right questions at the government board level to start addressing some of those needs. So again, in negative operations in 2022, 2023 is impacting it there. Any additional comments or questions I can address in your self-insurance? Perfect. Last item I have for you on a financial piece is your long-term debt. So again, to get this one out of the way, you've got a brand new line item in there for GASB 87. It amounted to a whopping $139,000 of additional liability we had to bring onto the books. Took a lot of time and effort to come down to what that number actually needed to be. I can't remember the total number of contracts we had to review with a fine-tooth comb to make sure we weren't missing any, but that was the impact of GASB 87 here for you in 2022. Your total outstanding debt at the end of the year was $13.1 million. That was subject to the equalized value limitation. So Wisconsin state statute says that you can have X percentage of total equalized value as outstanding debt. At the county board level, there's no way possible really to ever come up to about 100% of that need. It would be extremely politically unpopular. Typically, a highly leveraged county is anywhere from 20 to 25%, and I would consider that a fairly large debt capacity. Here at Polk County, the total amount that we're currently using of that limitation is 3.8%. So if you do have long-term capital needs that requires borrowing, you have plenty of capacity there available in order to meet those needs. The only other context that I'll give to you here when it comes to budgeting, again, if you look into the budgeting standpoint versus this is where we're at statutorial wise, when we look at how we set our levy limit, our county levy limit, you basically start with the prior year. What was our levy last year? How much was net new construction? How much is the state going to legally allow us to increase our levy? Once you basically take credit for any net new construction, that's what your new cap is going to be. There is a provision in the state statute, however, that states you can levy the additional amount needed in order to meet any debt service obligations. So that's the principal and the interest that you need to make in the next year. You can add that to your levy under state statute. And the county has been doing that, as all municipalities basically virtually do, in order to basically, it's a tool to help keep your levy limit flat or marginal increases to help keep operations running smoothly, more or less to politically make sure everybody's saying my property taxes are flat. We're not really jacking them up in any one year and then a severe drop off in the next, and then the next year it's going up, kind of the roller coaster ride, so to speak. So it is something to start paying attention to with the help of Don, Sherry, and finance, and looking at what is your current debt service levy, because there is essentially a plug number into your levy limit in order to help things smooth out and operations to continue and run smoothly. In order to have and maintain that, it seems a little counterintuitive at first thought, but my recommendation is you need to borrow. You need to have the outstanding debt issuance in order to take credit for it on your debt service levy limit. Again, in order for this very, very useful budgeting tool, in order for operations to be maintained and in order to property taxes in total not have significant swings one year, drop it off the face of the earth the next year, and then you have a fairly large debt service requirement the following year. I've seen it very, very often in the past. That is very unpopular to do, and the feedback from the general public in total is usually unfavorable in that. So I bring that up because I know that there's some newer folks around the table that might not have experienced that little kind of funny quirk in that whole formula. And yes, it's lack of a better word, it's playing a little bit of a game in total, but it's there for a specific reason. And you do want to advantageously take advantage of that when it comes to budgeting. So, based on that, is any questions that I can help address with that one, or anything else that I've brought up to this point? Because the only other thing I have to follow, which some people are more visual than there's some bar graphs and everything here that can show where your total revenues, the sources are coming from. And then the next one is where your expenditures are going, broken down by function and what their purpose is. From a revenue side of things, you can see you're very highly leveraged into where your revenue sources are, being number one, taxes, and number two, state and federal grants. That's what your intergovernmental bar graphs are. And all the discussion you're going to have for public charges for services or your fees, you can see on a bar graph there, it's a drop in the bucket in total. Very important, obviously, to take care of those from a long-term standpoint, but from a major financing source, take care of what you can, obviously, but it's not gonna be a windfall by any means. On the expenditure side of things, the only outlier I will note for you in 2022, there's a blue bar graph under general government that really jumps through the roof there. And the primary driver of that is the government center remodel is all classified and considered governmental activity. Questions?
What does the interest rate look like? our size?
That one I would have to defer to a bond agency out there. They've got their finger on the pulse more so on what the current rate is. I operate in at least a 12-month in the past cycle. I do know that the trend is obviously increasing. So hopefully I wasn't that long-winded for you where I'm just completely confusing everybody, but I like to go into a little bit more detail at the committee level and save kind of more of the broad comments for the general board, giving you all the opportunity to impress your colleagues.
We good?
Great job.
Thank you.
We need a review of the library service rates, and that's a resolution.
Could I,
Not,
Chair Arcand, if it's okay, I'll go up to the podium and introduce this topic. Or do you want to go into the presentation that we had up before? And I think it's close to the end. I'm not presuming to be the library funding expert, and I have some unanswered questions about it as well, but we had a question from one of the supervisors last week, and it's a recurring agenda item. So I figured I better burrow in a little bit. I'll share what I know, but I think there's probably more discussion. So there, I'll get us there. By the way, Jeremy, our most recent discussion with our investment advisors, they're saying 4.25, 4.5. One more slide. Thank you. So you have a resolution in your packet back from 2020, predates me, but it's referencing Act 150 in the statutes, or it became a statute, about the level of support for municipal libraries. And folks who know more, please chime in here. But it's all about covering the cost of borrowing. So if you're a municipal library and Don Wortham from Clam Falls comes and borrows at the Frederick Library, there's no county library, then Frederick gets to mark on a sheet how much it costs to deliver that service to Don Wortham. It's basically the central idea here. And statute says counties have to provide at least 70% of that, cover at least 70% of that expense. Resolution 4820 kind of gives you a blow-by-blow history of what the county has done on that. 2014, if I was reading right in the statute, in our resolution, went from 70 to 80%, recognizing the importance of libraries essentially, 80 to 90% in 2018, and in 2020, the board elected to move the level from 90 to 95%. So the question came up from another supervisor, what would it look like to go to 100%? And that was established as a goal back, way back, even before Resolution 4820. What would it look like to do that? And this is where I start to run aground a little bit, probably need some help from council, but it sounds like what we need is a request from libraries to do this. And then you as a board could create a resolution that looks a whole lot like 4820 and specify in the resolution that you want to go from 95% to 100%. So we haven't had that, and Shabana, you know more about the dates on this than I do, and please chime in if it would be helpful and protect me from, falling into an abyss somewhere. But
we don't have a resolution in front of us.
You have a previous resolution that shows you what has happened in the past. And it's sort of a model if you decided to go forward with moving from 95 to 100%, what it would look like. If you do nothing, the board does nothing, we'll stick at 95%, as we have done in the last couple of years.
All right, well, I would say unless the resolution comes in front of us, we're doing nothing. We don't have a resolution.
No, you don't. This is just it's a standing
request.
standing agenda item each year. And then we had a specific request from a supervisor for more information. So we prepared the slide and you've got to listen to me for an extra 3
That
minutes.
supervisor forwards it and it becomes a resolution, we would definitely have to deal with. I don't think we're gonna looking for it. I'm not going to.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Right. How about the administrator's update?
You know, I'll just give you a couple of quick items here. The job for my position has been posted internally. It will do so for 2 weeks and then we will send that out to outside perspectives as well. So we're making progress there. One of the things we try to do is to enhance the working environment here, and we have are doing a pilot project of offering a lunch to individuals here in the county, the workers. So we're gonna do a couple of different local restaurants will be offering their menu on Monday morning. And then on either Tuesday or Thursday, they will, if you order it, they will bring it in and the employees can pick up lunch here. The idea came because the food trucks were so popular, but now we don't have any food trucks. We had one this summer for 1 day a week and now it's stopped coming. So we are trying to just kind of enhance the working environment here. We have KJ's New North on one of those days, and we have Balsam Lake Cafe on the other. They both agreed. So we're gonna try that out. And I think it's something that, you know, people will appreciate because there's not a restaurant within walking distance here for folks. So we're doing that.
Could I provide a friendly point of
Yeah.
context? So there's no budget impact to this because the employees are paying for their own lunches.
That's true. Thanks. Little omission. of mine.
Excellent point.
Also, I will say this, you know, our zoning administrator has moved on to, Jason has moved on to St. Croix County. Process of recruiting for another zoning administrator. And until then, in the meantime, Bob has contracted with, I believe it's MSA, and they have a professional Department of Zoning administrators who will be picking up those actual zoning ordinance changes and CUPs and BOA, handling those types of activities.
Did
But
we
we
not
do
get
have,
our wage study done in time or what?
pardon?
Did we not get our wage study done in
It's a
time? or what
promotion.
happened?
We didn't need a wage study to look at this one. Yeah, he is in essence the Bob down in St. Croix County. And he got a significant step up in level and in pay. Good for him. So that's all I have.
All right, we have our WPPA negotiations. Are we gonna go into a closed session and have a chat about it, or what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Should go into. All right, somebody get us into closed session under 19.85(1)(e).
I'll move that we move into a closed session and statute number 19.851E.
Second.
All right, we're supposed to have a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And who will be in our closed session? Open session. We have doors open. We need to review and update our 2023 committee work plan. Need any changes to it?
You just mentioned the union negotiation possibly.
Yeah, we want that on.
It's gonna be mostly budget
No,
and then county board compensation.
when do we gotta do that?
Well, before the end of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, but we want to do it sooner rather than later. The last time we ended up too late.
Passing it, yep.
Yeah, so can we put it on for next month?
Yeah,
It's on and it's.
Oh, it is on?
because you need to do it before
on, yeah.
papers are taken out to run for the next term.
Yeah. All right. Anything else for our work plan?
Policy updates.
Policy updates? Have we done any policy updates at all?
Sir, I could address that. So we will have an investment policy to review. It's being reviewed by the investment committee. We owe the general government committee a finance policy review and update. I can provide the update on the update at the next meeting, but I don't think we'll be looking at anything. And then similarly with the HR policy, we owe an update. I can provide an update on the update for that as well.
Very good.
Way ahead.
All right.
The
So
update.
will those be subject matters for our next meeting?
Yeah.
You'll have that-
That's great.
Next meeting?
Definitely so.
The update.
All right, if there's any other subject matters for our next meeting prior to, you need to get a hold of me or get a hold of Vince or get a hold of somebody so we get them on the agenda. Not on the agenda, we can't act on them. Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll stand adjourned at 11:21. How come these two clocks are different times?
My computer says 11:22, so does that make